But Everett had politely but firmly set his boundaries. He had seen the desperation in Frida's eyes and the hollow, unstable glaze in Haley's gaze. He had excused himself, citing the chaos of unpacking, and closed the door. He was a man of discernment. He knew the difference between a person seeking help and a family seeking a shield. For their reputation. The true turning point of the season occurred not on the manicured streets of Shady Pines, but in the sterile, bustling corridors of the County General Hospital. A week after moving in, Evelyn's chronic hypertension flared up due to the stress of the move. Worried, Everett immediately drove his mother to the emergency room, where she was admitted for a comprehensive cardiovascular checkup and a few hours of observation. Everett sat in the waiting room, his fingers interlaced, his heart quietly lifted in prayer. The smell of antiseptic and the sound of distant pagas filled the air. Family of Evelyn Waziri. A clear, melodic voice broke through his thoughts. Everett rose to his feet the moment he saw the doctor approaching. The hurried footsteps in the corridor gradually faded from his awareness, as his attention fixed entirely on the woman walking toward him. She moved with quiet confidence, neither rushed nor hesitant. Every stride reflected the composure of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions under pressure. She wore navy blue scrub trousers beneath a crisp white lab coat that swayed gently as she walked. A stethoscope rested comfortably around her neck, while her dark hair was gathered into a neat, professional bun. There was nothing flamboyant about her appearance. She wore no extravagant jewelry, no striking makeup, and nothing designed to draw attention to herself. Yet she did. Pinned neatly to her coat was a simple name tag. Dr. Queen Mycano. Internal Medicine. As she drew closer, Everett felt something immediately drawn to her. He felt an instant attraction. The tense atmosphere of the hospital corridor seemed to soften. The anxiety that had tightened his chest since bringing his mother to the emergency unit eased, if only for a moment. Queen possessed a quiet, radiant beauty that required no enhancement. Her features were elegant without being intimidating, and her smile, though restrained by professionalism, carried genuine warmth. But it wasn't her beauty that held Everett's attention. It was her eyes. They reflected a depth he had rarely encountered. There was peace in them, not the artificial calm of someone pretending everything was fine, but the settled confidence of a woman whose heart had weathered storms and found solid ground. They were compassionate eyes, the kind that listened before speaking and understood suffering without needing an explanation. For the briefest moment, their eyes met. Neither spoke. Then Queen offered a gentle, reassuring smile. "Good afternoon," she said warmly. "I'm Dr. Queen Mycano. Are you Madam Evelyn's son?" Everett realized he had been staring. He quickly composed himself and stepped forward, extending his hand. "I'm Everett Waziri," he said. "Yes, I am her son." Queen accepted the handshake with quiet professionalism. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Everett. I've been supervising your mother's care." Her handshake was firm but gentle, confident without trying to impress. "I guess she is doing well. Your mother is doing much better. Her blood pressure was dangerously high when she arrived, but we've administered an intravenous antihypertensive, and she is stabilizing beautifully. We are just waiting on some routine lab results before we can discharge her." "Thank God," Everett breathed, a genuine sigh of relief escaping his lips. Queen's eyes softened at his words. "Yes, thank God indeed. He kept her safe during the drive here." Everett looked at her closely. It was rare to find a physician in a chaotic city hospital who openly acknowledged faith with such simple, unforced sincerity. "You're a believer," he stated, it being more of a joyous realization than a question. Queen's smile widened, lighting up her tired face. "I am. Deeply so. My faith is the reason I wear this coat." For the next 20 minutes, the hospital corridor seemed to fade away. They spoke about Evelyn's medical history, but the conversation naturally drifted into deeper waters, their shared values, their love for God, and their views on service. Everett found himself captivated by Queen's intellect, her humility, and the absolute absence of pretension in her character. Queen, used to meeting men who were intimidated by her profession or consumed by their own status, found Everett's grounded, respectful, and godly nature deeply refreshing. It was an instant, undeniable connection, an alignment of two souls rooted in the same soil. Over the next few months, the relationship progressed with a beautiful, natural momentum. Everett began visiting Jenny's house. At first it was simply friendship. They will sit on the porch, drink sweet tea, and talk. And Jenny will sometimes join them. They will talk about Christianity, life, and the future. And Jenny watched them with hope in her heart. She recognized the hand of God at work, fulfilling his promise of peace and blessing for a daughter who had chosen the narrow path. In time, love quietly found its way into their hearts, taking root and settling gently between them. When news of Everett and Queen's rapidly blossoming romance reached the house next door, Frida's jealousy transformed into a bitter, toxic rage. She sat in her darkened living room, watching through the blinds as Everett's luxury SUV pulled into Jenny's driveway. He stepped out, carrying a bouquet of fresh lilies for Queen, who met him at the door with a radiant smile. "Look at them," Frida spat, her manicured nails digging into the palms of her hands. "Look at that little mouse, Queen. A plain, boring hospital doctor. And she gets the billionaire. She gets the finest man to enter this neighborhood in 30 years. Haley walked into the living room, wearing a silk robe, her hair unwashed, her skin sallow. She looked like a ghost of the vibrant girl she had been. The scandal had broken her spirit, but instead of turning to repentance, she had turned to darker vices to numb the pain. She held a glass of vodka in her trembling hand. "Everett, and his holy Queen?" Haley asked, her voice hollow and raspy. "You know, that should have been my life. You told me being churchy wasn't trendy. Well, it seems you were wrong. Wealthy billionaires belong to the so-called non-trendy lane all along." Frida turned to her daughter, her heart breaking but her pride still refusing to bend. "Everett is a fool, Haley. He's captivated by that religious act they put on next door. Don't worry about him. You are a star. This scandal will pass, and we will find someone 10 times richer than Everett Waziri." But deep down, a cold, terrifying realization was beginning to take root in Frida's chest. For 24 years, she had mocked Jenny's modesty. She had laughed at Queen's boundaries. She had believed that by giving Haley total freedom, she was giving her the world. Now, Queen was universally respected, loved, and about to marry a man of immense honor and wealth. Haley was a pariah, drowning in shame and substance abuse. The wedding of Queen and Everett was a magnificent event. It was held at the Grand Community Church, where Jenny had prayed for decades. The sanctuary was filled with flowers, light, and beautiful worship music. Queen walked down the aisle like a queen in truth, her white lace gown elegant and modest, her face glowing with pure joy. Everett looked at her, as if she were the greatest treasure on earth. From her front porch across the street, Frida watched the limousines depart for the reception. The silence in her own house was deafening. 2 years passed. The joy of Queen and Everett's marriage filled the neighborhood. They had welcomed a beautiful, healthy baby boy. And the sound of children's laughter once again echoed from Jenny's backyard. Queen continued her medical practice, balancing her brilliant career with her roles as a wife and mother. But across the ivy wall, the darkness had completely conquered the Garner household. Haley's addiction had spiraled entirely out of control. The vodka had transitioned to prescription pills, and the pills had transitioned to illicit street narcotics. Her fashion company had gone completely bankrupt, its assets liquidated to pay off debts and legal fees from her blackmail scandal. Worse still, Haley had vanished for 6 months into the seedy underbelly of the city, running with a dangerous crowd of addicts, dealers, and illicit sex. Frida spent millions hiring private investigators to find her. When Haley finally returned home, she was unrecognizable. She collapsed on Frida's doorstep one rainy night, emaciated, shivering, and covered in sores. Frida, horrified and weeping, dragged her daughter inside. She immediately called a private concierge doctor to treat Haley in the privacy of their home, still desperately trying to hide the truth from the neighborhood. The diagnosis was a series of devastating blows, each heavier than the last. The doctor sat Frida down in the study, his face grave. "Madam Garner, I don't know how to tell you this gently. Your daughter is severely immunocompromised. She has tested positive for HIV and it seems to be in advanced stages, likely contracted through shared needles or unprotected contact during her time away." Frida choked on her breath, her hand flying to her mouth. No, that's impossible. We can treat it. There are medications." "There are," the doctor interrupted gently. "But her body is already completely ravaged by severe drug addiction and profound malnutrition. Her organs are failing." Frida looked up, her eyes wide with terror. Haley is approximately 4 months pregnant. The pregnancy is highly unstable, and given her condition, neither the fetus. The world spun around Frida. The golden tower she had built for her daughter had not just collapsed, it had become a tomb. The final week of Haley's life was an agony that Shady Pines would never forget. Haley was confined to a medical bed set up in her bedroom. The beautiful designer clothes that once filled her walk-in closet were replaced by sterile linens and stained sheets. Her mind fluctuated wildly between terrifying drug withdrawal hallucinations and moments of piercing, agonizing clarity. Frida sat by her bedside day and night. The gold jewelry was gone, her hair was a messy, unkempt silver, her expensive suits were replaced by a stained sweater. She looked 100 years old. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Haley woke up from a deep coma. Her eyes, yellowed and sunken into her skull, focused on her mother who sat clutching her skeletal hand. "Mom," Haley whispered, her voice like dry leaves scraping against concrete. "I'm here, my baby. I'm here," Frida wept, kissing her daughter's cold fingers. "The doctor is coming back. We are going to get you through this. I'll buy you the best treatment in the world." Haley let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. It was a terrifying, hollow sound. Still trying to buy a solution. "Haley, please. Look at me, mother." Haley suddenly shrieked, a burst of manic, dying energy surging through her thin frame. She tried to pull her hand away, her eyes flashing with a sudden, vicious rage. "Look what you made me." Frida flinched, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. "Haley, I loved you. I gave you everything. I gave you every single thing you ever asked for. And that is why I am dying." Haley screamed, her chest heaving as she gasped for air. "You gave me everything I wanted, but you never gave me what I needed. You never gave me discipline. You never told me no." Frida shook her head frantically. No. I wanted you to be free. I wanted you to be happy. You wanted me to be your trophy." Haley spat, her voice dropping to a bitter, venomous whisper. "When Jenny came to this house 24 years ago to warn us, when she told you I was in danger, you threw her out. You insulted her. You chose your pride over my soul. You watched me walk straight into hell, and you clapped your hands because I looked pretty doing it." "Haley, please, don't say these things," Frida begged, collapsing against the edge of the bed, her body shaking with convulsive sobs. "I curse the day you gave birth to me." "Frida," Haley muttered, her eyes beginning to glaze over as the final shadows of death drew near. I curse your indulgence. I curse your silence. You sat there. You just sat there and watched me ruin myself. The monitor beside the bed began to beat frantically as Haley's heart rate plummeted. Her breathing became shallow, rhythmic, and labored. As the final moments of her life slipped away, Haley's expression suddenly changed. The rage vanished, replaced by a terrifying, childlike blankness. She fixed her eyes on the ceiling, staring at something invisible to Frida. Her lips began to move, and a soft, eerie melody drifted from her throat. It wasn't the voice of a 38-year-old dying woman, it sounded exactly like the voice of a 14-year-old girl, clear, haunting, and completely devoid of life. Who sat and watched my infant head. Haley, stop, please. Frida wept, covering her ears. When sleeping on my cradle bed, Haley's voice grew fainter, but the pitch remained chillingly perfect. And tears of sweet affection shed. With one final, rattling breath, Haley whispered the last words. My mother. The monitor flatlined into a continuous, piercing tone. Haley's eyes remained wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling, frozen in an eternal accusation. Frida fell to the floor, screaming a primal, heartbroken sound of absolute despair. The harvest was complete. 1 month after Haley's funeral, the Garner mansion was completely silent. The gates were locked. The lawns, once pristine, were beginning to grow wild and overgrown, littered with dead leaves. Inside, the house was dark. Frida sat alone in the center of the dusty living room, rocking back and forth in an old armchair. She had refused to leave the house, refused to speak to the neighbors, and refused the basket of food that Jenny had gently left on her porch weeks prior. The afternoon sun was setting, casting long, bloody streaks of crimson light through the closed blinds. Frida felt an icy draft sweep through the sealed room. The temperature dropped instantly, freezing the breath in her throat. She didn't move. She didn't have the strength to care. Then, from the corner of the dark room, near the stairs where Haley used to run down as a child, a sound began. It was a voice. A soft, airy, invisible presence. It was unmistakably Haley's voice, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was a beautiful, terrifying melody, drifting through the empty spaces of the grand house. Who sat and watched my infant head. When sleeping on my cradle bed. Frida did not scream. She did not run. Slowly, with a face completely drained of hope, life, and pride, she leaned her head back against the cushion of the chair. As the invisible song grew louder, wrapping around her like a shroud, Frida slowly closed her eyes, condemned to spend the rest of her days listening to the eternal nursery rhyme of her failure.